Hello there. I want to start this off by saying, America, I am absolutely disappointed in you, especially Middle America, which voted extremely red. I am disappointed in your electoral college system. I am disappointed in the fact that more people in these areas, poor people, voted for Trump. The guy who cares probably the least about your problems. Yes, Hillary doesn't give a fuck about poor people in many ways, but Trump, removing the corrupted politician does not get rid of the corruption. It just puts, you are literally having a, I'm gonna try and keep my cool. So there are different reasons why I'm mad at different parts. I am not going to throw shade at the third-party voters. I mean, sure, Johnson voters voted for a fucking moron, but at least they didn't vote for Trump, a xenophobe, a racist, a misogynistic prick. We are going to be dealing with another neocon presidency. Now, I don't, as many times as I have alluded to the fact that his rhetoric is very similar to that of fascists, I don't think he actually is a fascist. A bit of a nationalist, maybe. A eugenicist, he's definitely come out in favor of eugenics in the past. But in general, I mean, I don't think we're going to end up with a second Hitler. We did not have a complete collapse of the system. I think the system will keep Trump partially restrained. But I've got to say, generals, any of the generals, the Constitution says that if the president orders you to do something, or actually, I don't think it's a constitutional thing, but just in general, soldiers, you have the right to not do what Trump tells you if it is not constitutional. So, I'd also say a man as short-tempered as Trump is, a man who will tweet at 3 a.m. because you told him he has small hands, who will threaten to sue, don't hand the guy the fucking nuclear codes. Seriously, don't hand him the nuclear codes, because if he can be set off that easily, I do not want to see what will happen if that man has the nuclear codes. And I know I'm talking all doom and gloom. I am quite pissed. The poor people who voted for Trump, they voted for Trump because they were convinced that everything else was at fault, that it was the Mexicans crossing the borders, that it was the Muslims who are coming in, they're trying to convert you to Islam. And you've got to be a jihadist. So, all these non-threats, all these threats that don't exist. It's not the Mexican crossing the border who's taking your job. The guy who's taking your job is someone overseas being exploited because the country doesn't have as many labor regulations. Countries like China, where workers are jumping out of fucking windows, where there are nets to catch them. No, they don't think put in conditions, make better conditions for the workers. They think, no, let's just put nets so that we can scoop them back up and get them back on the production line. So that, and the people who actually, so those people didn't really steal your jobs, they were given your jobs. The people who actually stole your fucking jobs were the politicians on top. And generally, more of the Republican politicians, people like Trump who outsourced. It's the rich, it's the capitalist class who have economically disenfranchised you. And now you're voting for a man who embodies everything wrong with the system. Ugh. You vote, and this is why I'm pissed at people who voted for Trump. At least Stein voters, they wanted to throw a fucking brick through the window, and I'm saying this as someone who went and voted for Stein. They wanted to throw a fucking brick through the establishment window, which I fucking agree with. But, and this is even worse. Fuck the electoral college system. I have been against it since I heard of it, because it sounded like it could be taken advantage of. This is why Gore lost the election in 2000 despite getting the popular vote. Hillary, when looking, she got more votes than Trump did. But Trump got all the electoral votes because of Middle America. Because of all these red states that were there. I think the only real central state that didn't vote for Trump was Illinois. And I think Minnesota was projected to win for Hillary. And as much as I fucking hate Hillary, because I hate all these neolibs, guys like Obama, Barney Frank, you're getting all these establishment shills. And, I mean, hell, I've even got many problems with Bernie Sanders. But Trump is not the solution. He's the logical conclusion to the corruption. He's the guy, he's the corrupting force. Having the corrupting force running the country doesn't mean you're having less corruption in office. In fact, it means you're going to have more. Now, I can only hope that Democrats in Congress will be more galvanized to try and block bills. But we don't have a majority, or I say we, even though I'm not a Democrat. They don't have the majority. The Republicans have the majority. So, what I suggest is if you're liberal, I suggest that you go out and you vote for your candidates for... you vote for the most liberal candidate you can for your office, for your local office. Within 2 years' time, for Senate, House of Representatives, we need as much resistance to a Trump presidency as possible. And we saw this with Andrew Jackson. Republicans and Democrats came together to keep him from doing some of the more insane stuff. But considering how insane the Republican Party is, they're not going to block anything Trump wants to do. They're going to bow their heads and say, yes, sir. Fucking ridiculous. I apologize. I am really fucking angry about this. I stayed up all night to watch the election and had to go to work after at 2 a.m. Eastern Time, which meant that pretty much all the polling data had been in, and I didn't get much sleep, and I haven't gotten sleep in 36 hours now. I apologize for these pauses. This is quite a bit of a rant. But just because Trump has won doesn't mean we stop fighting. We don't lay down and fucking die. And I'm saying that to anarchists, to Marxists, to tankies even, as much as I dislike them, to Maoists. Don't stop fighting Trump. As many people as I don't like on the left, and usually the radical left does keep fighting. I'm not worried about the Maoists and the Stalinists. I don't want them. I don't think that they'll stop fighting because Trump is in office. I don't think they'll lay down and die. They didn't lay down and die when Stalin's regime was torn down, or at the death of the USSR. Anarchists, seriously, don't lay down and die. Vote for the most left-wing candidate. Try and drag the system as far left as you can. And also drag it as libertarian as you can, too, at the same time. And I'm not talking about the bullshit Libertarian Party of America. I mean, drag it to the libertarian left as much as you fucking can. Democratic Socialists, keep fighting for your reform. I mean, try and get candidates who are left-wing and moderates on the... Try and get your candidates in, because the left needs to be galvanized against Trump. Even segments of the right should be galvanized against Trump. These fucking ANCAPs who voted for Trump. Why? Why? This guy is the definition of a fucking statist. He's also an ultra-capitalist at the same time, but a statist. You voted for the biggest statist. You voted for the most authoritarian guy when you're supposed to be, quote, libertarians. Where the fuck did you go wrong? Why are you voting for a... Like, I know you guys tend not to be great people and all, considering the fact that I've had interactions with plenty of you. But, I mean, if your views are really what you say they are, why the fuck are you voting for a... for what is essentially a not just a statist, I'm trying to think of the fucking word here, a protectionist. I thought you guys were supposed to be against protectionism, which protectionism I know isn't specifically a left-wing or right-wing thing, and it's an economic populist position. And even then, I don't think he's an actual protectionist. He tapped into the paleocon base, but he's going to run things like a neocon. If he was going to run things like a paleocon, I would be less worried. But even then, I'd still say you should fight. But don't lay down and die no matter what. Keep fighting. Because the right wing has not pulled back because the left wing has become soft. Just because the liberals have become soft doesn't mean the right wing has been going farther right and has become more authoritarian. That's the only reason why Gary Johnson came out in response, because he's essentially an old school Republican. And fucking I'm trying to keep my calm here. I really hope I'm not boring anybody with this rant. I highly doubt it. Seriously, Trump. Of all the fucking people we could have elected, Trump. I'm almost saying that we deserve what we get in response to letting a maniac into office. I mean, we knew the consequences, but I can't blame the American people as much as I can blame the electoral college system, because Hillary still won the popular vote. But the electoral college system makes California irrelevant, even though it's the most highly populated state. Sure, there's a few more colleges, or more than a few more colleges in California, but California doesn't sway an election. It's almost always going to Democrats because of the electoral college system. And I mean, with the machines that we have now, where we don't have to physically count ballots because we can keep track of what people vote for through computers on how many people voted for a candidate. I mean, why don't we just fucking take it to numbers? And I am going to talk about the electoral college system for the next 4 years. Liberals need to talk about this too. So do anarchists. So do Marxists. Everyone on the left needs to talk about the electoral college system. Hell, you know what? I'm even going to reach across the aisle here and say the Never Trump conservatives, you guys need to talk about the electoral college system and why it's so fucked up. Johnson voters need to talk about it. I mean, sure, these guys pulled in, Gary Johnson pulled in nearly 5%. Jill Stein pulled in at almost 2%, or like 1.5%. I mean, this third-party support is damn near unheard of. But it's also not enough to sway the election, which is why I'm not blaming third-party voters at all. But I just want to say, Trump voters, if you really think it's the Mexican crossing the border who's stealing your job, you are a fucking imbecile. It is the guy on top, the wolf you fucking voted for to guard the chickens, to guard the hens. You're going to come out and you're going to realize that all the hens are gone. But somehow, the hen will still, not the hen, the wolf will still say, it's the Mexicans, it's the Muslims, it's the blacks. Fucking hell. I mean, also the fact that Hillary couldn't get she couldn't get as much of the black vote as Obama, which was expected by almost every political pundit, which was true. Any Hispanic people who voted for Trump, other than Cubans, because Cubans have a much different situation and a much different relationship to the Republican Party than other Hispanic groups. Hispanic people that voted for Trump, what the fuck are you thinking? Are you that fucking masochistic? I mean, seriously, anyone who voted for Trump, are you that fucking masochistic? I am actually posing this as a serious fucking question at this point, because we have voted for essentially I don't know whether this is a cult of personality or a movement. I think it has elements of both. But we essentially voted for a loose cannon. We voted for someone who could lose his temper. Someone who could lose his temper, and in response to losing his temper, nuke. All I have to say, nuclear codes. Trump will have the fucking nuclear codes as president unless our generals say, hey, we know what we're working with here. Maybe we shouldn't give him the nuclear codes. But I can guarantee that that's not going to happen. Trump is going to have the nuclear codes. And we, as the American people, enough of us were not intelligent enough to stop it. Enough of us didn't know enough to stop it. We did not have the information to stop it, despite the availability of that information. And so many people bought into the liberal media bullshit. Where was the liberal media when Trump was talking about I mean, this guy's got his hands on the fucking environment. Again, I don't think Hillary... I think, honestly, when it comes to foreign policy, we probably had roughly the same thing between Trump and Hillary. Easily, that's one of the things that Hillary could have actually been possibly worse at than Trump. It's fucking ridiculous. Healthcare. Trump wants to repeal Obamacare. What the fuck's he gonna replace it with? The privatized system that we have before. People like me won't be able to afford healthcare because of a Trump presidency. I am fucking disappointed in you, America. I also fucking mad and will never forgive the DNC for running a candidate as weak as Hillary Clinton, as unexciting as Hillary Clinton, as in the pockets of corporations as Hillary Clinton. It's the only reason she lost is because she couldn't sustain enough popularity among the left wing to get votes. Bernie actually managed to get votes from Republicans despite being to the left of Hillary. And that's because of economic populism. People should have saw the populism in the response to Bernie. The DNC should have looked and said, hey, maybe we should try and help the progressives out. Either run Hillary to make her look more exciting, don't run her as the standard corporate candidate as they fucking did, or run Bernie Sanders. That would have been much better if we ran Bernie Sanders. If we ran Bernie Sanders, we would not be in the situation right now where Trump grabbed the presidency. Bernie was consistently more popular than Trump. And no, I don't think the elections were rigged, but I do think the DNC definitely swayed the vote with the way that they tried to demonize Bernie. They demonized him as a socialist, despite the fact that he's not even a fucking socialist. He's a social democrat. I mean, for fuck's sake, he's a social democrat. How the fuck do you not get that? Socialism. I don't see Bernie Sanders handing the means of production to workers. I simply see him putting in social safety nets. Unfucking believable. So, off of his own branding as a democratic socialist, which I actually have very little issue with, despite the fact that he's not a democratic socialist. An actual democratic socialist does want to give means of production to workers, and while I think Bernie was an all-around great guy, and again, I think that his branding actually did something good for socialism, where if I walk up and I say, I'm a socialist, I'm a libertarian socialist, which is how I tend to word it, much rather than calling myself an anarchist, because when I tell people I'm an anarchist, they immediately think, oh no, he wants to overthrow government and have no rules or regulations on anything. No, I'm a libertarian socialist. I don't want the government to be involved in people's lives, but I do want to have some amount of rules and regulations, and I want to restructure society. I mean, walking up and saying I'm a libertarian socialist, other than explaining how it's not actually a contradiction, and what the word libertarian actually means, or what the word libertarian has historically meant. Other than that, it was fucking easier, because people didn't immediately think you're a pinko commie or whatever. I mean, for fuck's sake. I apologize. I am really fucking angry about Trump getting the presidency. The one person who I was saying don't vote for. The one person. Vote for Hillary, vote for Stein, vote for Johnson, I don't fucking care. But voting for Trump? Fucking Trump? You voted for xenophobia, white supremacy. You voted for misogyny. You voted for a man who bragged about sexual assault, bragged about grabbing America by the pussy. And as much as what Bill Clinton did was unethical and how many elements of it means that it could be considered rape, the fact that, and I do think that if it really did happen the way that it's talked about, yeah, it was definitely rape because of the power dynamics and the fact that he manipulated her. Fucking as disgusting and despicable as Bill Clinton is, which, how the fuck is that a slight against Hillary? I mean, saying, Hillary, your husband is a terrible man and he's a terrible husband, like saying, oh yeah, your husband cheated on you and he's a terrible husband. How the fuck is that a slight against Hillary? There are plenty of other slights against Hillary that can be made. I've made plenty of them. But we literally... This isn't even like voting for the wife of someone who is potentially a rapist. We voted for someone who bragged about essentially being a rapist, about essentially sexually assaulting women. I grab them by the pussy, and because you're a celebrity, they let me do whatever they want. That's not, by the way, that doesn't actually mean consent. That just means they don't physically fight you. Fucking ridiculous. I'm fucking signing off right now. And that's it. Let's fight for the next 4 years to turn things around as much as possible. Because maybe now that we've got such an ugly face on these neoliberal policies, maybe now we can be more galvanized against them than we were before. I mean, I would have been against them no matter what face was put on them. But I feel like for some people, it might have slipped through if Hillary tried to do it. Bill Clinton managing to unravel the New Deal, he managed to do what Reagan could only dream of. He managed to do what the right wing could only dream of. And now the right wing has power, so maybe it won't actually be able to be pushed through because everyone sees the ugly face on this. We are not going to stand by when a Republican does this. Maybe, just maybe, seriously, we need to fight, and this is serious, as serious as it gets. And even then I'm saying, yes, as anarchists, vote, while at the same time doing direct action. Vote strategically to try and make the best society possible within our current system, and then try and protest for the system. I say protest, but I mean that actually quite loosely. Yeah. If we don't fight, we are fucked. We are fucking done.